There's a small, forgotten village tucked deep in the mountains, its name long erased from maps and its streets cloaked in perpetual silence. At the heart of the village stands a crumbling convent, abandoned for decades. The locals refuse to go near it. They say the place is cursed, and at the center of the curse is the tale of the Crimson Veil. 30 years ago, Sister Agnes, a devout but overly ambitious nun, arrived at the convent. Unlike her peers, she wasn't there out of pure faith. Sister Agnes had heard rumors, stories of visions, divine messages, and even miracles occurring within those ancient walls. She believed the convent held the key to unlocking her connection with God. But the other nuns were different. They seemed distant, their faces pale, as though they were always on the brink of terror. They avoided the chapel at night and whispered prayers under their breath when they thought no one was watching. Sister Agnes didn't understand their fear until the night she first saw her. It was during the convent's midnight prayers. The room was dimly lit by flickering candles, the air thick with the smell of wax and incense. As the sisters prayed in unison, a chilling wind swept through the chapel, extinguishing the candles. When the last flame died, the room plunged into darkness, and then a figure appeared. She was standing at the altar, her face hidden beneath a blood-red veil that seemed to shimmer in the faint moonlight filtering through the stained glass windows. Her presence was suffocating, and her voice was unlike anything Sister Agnes had ever heard, soft yet filled with despair. "Do you seek the truth?" the veiled woman asked. Terrified but unable to look away, Sister Agnes nodded. The woman stretched out a hand holding the crimson veil. "Wear it," she whispered. "Only then will you see the face of God." The figure vanished as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving the crimson veil lying on the altar. The other nuns fled the chapel in silence, their faces pale, their lips tightly shut. But not Sister Agnes. She stayed behind, her curiosity overwhelming her fear. She picked up the veil and placed it over her head. The next morning, the sisters found her kneeling at the altar. Her body was stiff, her face concealed beneath the veil. When they lifted it, they screamed. Her eyes were gone, replaced by black, empty sockets that seemed to weep blood. Her lips were frozen in a twisted, agonized smile. Sister Agnes was buried in the convent grounds, but the crimson veil remained. No one dared to touch it, and soon after, the convent was abandoned. The story might have ended there, but it didn't. 3 weeks ago, Clara, a skeptical tourist, came to the village. She was the type who thrived on debunking local legends. Hearing the story of the Crimson Veil, she decided to investigate the abandoned convent for herself. Clara spent hours exploring the decaying building, laughing off the creaking floorboards and eerie silence. She even found the chapel and, to her surprise, the Crimson Veil still lying on the altar. She snapped photos, mocking the legend under her breath. That night, she was staying in a nearby inn when she was awakened by a sound, soft, muffled weeping. It was coming from outside her window. Her heart raced as she peeked through the curtains. Standing in the pale moonlight was a figure, her face hidden beneath a blood-red veil. Clara froze. The figure lifted a hand and pointed toward the convent. Clara told herself it was a dream. But when she checked her camera the next morning, the last photo she'd taken wasn't of the chapel. It was a blurry image of the veiled woman standing directly behind her. Clara was never seen again. Days later, hikers found her camera lying on the chapel altar. The crimson veil was gone. Now the locals say the veil is no longer confined to the convent. It appears wherever it finds someone desperate enough to seek the truth. And for those who dare to wear it, the truth is always the same: eternal darkness.